Hello everyone, and welcome back to another session of Bloodborne PvP and another weapon showcase. This time I am using Simon's Bowblade, guys, and this is a weapon that I was honestly extremely excited for, but now that I've gotten to use it a fair bit, it leaves it a little bit to be desired, I'd have to say. But more on that later. Let's get started with the basics on the weapon. So the Bowblade requires 8 strength, 15 skill, and 9 blood tinge in order to wield. It has no strength scaling, it has an S scaling in skill, an S scaling in blood tinge, as well as a C scaling in arcane. Its physical base damage is 160 and its blood tinge base damage is 160 as well. And for me, the attack rating on this weapon is about 470-ish. So, that's a thing. Now, with this weapon, when you're in the first form, the damage gained is entirely from your skill stat, while in the second form, it's entirely from the blood tinge. It's easy enough to understand. It's similar in a way to the Chikage, and is a weapon that's really meant to be best on builds that utilize both skill and blood tinge. And that said, the build I am using this on does not use both. It uses primarily skill of those two. So, this weapon is really not being used to the full potential on this build. That said, I have started my bow build, which will be very interesting and will be finished shortly actually, so you'll get to see this weapon used a fair bit more by me if that's something you're interested in, but more on that later as well. So, in the first form, this weapon is pretty good. I enjoy it a lot. That's the form I use the most often because that's the one that is most effective for my build. And, you know, that just makes sense. So, in the first form, it's got these fast speed, medium range slashing R1s, and there's a few stabs thrown in there as well, but primarily they are slashing attacks. The R2 is a medium speed, wide sweeping attack, which can be very useful, especially if you unlock, because then you can actually aim it very easily, and because it is a wide swinging attack, it makes it pretty reliable to hit with. The charged R2 is a double spin, and the second hit is where the majority of the damage is dealt. So it's similar in a way to the Hunter's Axe with its second form charged R2. The first swing doesn't deal terribly much, the second swing is the real damage dealer, and that said, it's not always really easy or viable to use that attack because you have to have proper distancing, so on and so forth. That said, if you're in a somewhat tight area and the person's trying to get around you, charging up for that charged R2 can be a really beneficial thing and can work out very, very well. Now, the second form on this weapon is where I think it leaves a little to be desired, and that's from my experience using it on both this build and on the bow build that I had been working on. I've been using the weapon since I was level 14, so, you know, I did a little speedrun strat stuff to get to it, and I've used it quite a fair bit. That build's now level 89, so, you know, I've got a decent amount of experience with it on a build that's primarily focused in blood tinge and arcane. So, point remains, the bow form, it leaves a bit to be desired. Yes, it's R1s in the bow form. The arrows that it shoots are, you know, able to deal a fair bit of damage, but they have horrible tracking. Like, the guns in this game track better than the arrows, so, you know, that leaves a bit to be desired. It's kind of bad. The R2s are slightly slower, more powerful shots. They still have that issue with the tracking. And the charged R2 is, shockingly, an even more powerful shot. Who would have guessed, right? Point remains, it's kind of difficult to hit someone with this if they are moving in any way, shape, or form that is not directly in line with you. It's kind of a problem. It's not really that great, and because of it, it leaves, you know, it leaves you very vulnerable. That, in combination with the fact that you can be disrupted on any of the arrows you shoot, whether it's an R1, R2, charged R2, they can all be disrupted. How often in this game do you actually dodge backwards and go to shoot someone with your gun, and the two of you end up shooting each other in PvP? How often does that happen? The answer is incredibly often. It happens so horribly, incredibly often, that if you try and back off to shoot someone from a distance with this thing, it's just a bad strategy. It's just a really bad strategy, because if you go in, you attack them, you back off, you go to shoot, chances are they backed off to shoot as well, and you'll end up being disrupted, and that doesn't end well for you. Clearly, that will not end well for you. So, be careful when you're using it in the second form. That's my advice on that. So, the pros of the weapon, overall, its range can be pretty deceiving in the first form. It's longer than it actually looks like it is. So, because of that, you can actually hit people from farther away than they expect, and that's a good thing. The free aiming of the charged R2 can be very useful due to the fact that it's got the double spin and it covers a very wide area because it is, of course, a spin attack, so that makes sense. The transform attack back from the second form to the first form has, honestly, the best tracking that I've experienced with this weapon. It's really strangely good. So, I'm not going to complain about that in any way, shape, or form. It's oddly far-reaching as well, so you can use that to your advantage. Second form, like I said, the damage is all from Blood Tinge, so if you have high Blood Tinge, that'll be good, but on a build with less than 20, it just leaves a lot to be desired, and, you know, that makes sense. It is what it is. The ability to attack with arrow from range is nice, but that said, tracking is poor, and the Evelyn does more damage in the majority of cases anyway, so again, it is what it is. That's all I got to say about that. So, aside from that, that's pretty much all I've got for the pros. Cons, as far as those are concerned, most of the attacks are not very wide swings, and the weapon does not work overly well against multiple opponents. So, with the way PvP is and the way ganking is in this game, it's, you know, kind of hard to deal with it sometimes. The second form attacks, like I said, they all have horrible tracking, but that makes sense. You know, arrows can't exactly curve in the air like bullets from guns in this game can, apparently. You know, it's not realistic in any way, so don't worry about it. So, other than that, second form stagger on enemies, it leaves a bit to be desired. First form stagger isn't all that great either, to be fair, but second form leaves a lot to be desired, so it is what it is, guys. That's all I gotta say about that. Anyway, this is the last fight in the video. I hope you enjoyed this one, found it helpful in one way or another. Please like, subscribe, and all of that good stuff, and I will see you guys next time with the Holy Moonlight Blade.